Hey,
What is up, dude?
happy Super Bowl Sunday.
I know the football.
Yeah, yeah. And for those listening, this is what we're doing instead of watching the game because neither me nor Mike care.
Yeah. Just not really big into it, man.
Yeah, I mean, this is gonna sound kind of cringy, but like combat footage stuff is like the only sport I really track anymore.
Combat footage stuff.
Yeah, I mean, like watching like actual combat footage and stuff like that. I mean, people are always like, "Oh, hey, are you into sports?" And I'm like, "No, I'm into like watching videos of Ukrainians kill Russian dudes." But
I'm
we,
into
we
the weird stuff.
yeah. So thank you everyone for coming back. This is episode 9. For those of you who've been listening for a while, thank you for helping us grow. I'm always constantly amazed at how quickly we're growing. Speaking of growth, I want to put out we have finally put all of my up-to-date episodes on YouTube, except for this one. It'll get there eventually. Um, Kind of a pain for me to figure all that out, but I got it kind of worked out now. With that, also huge shout out to the Instagram page, The Men with Green Eyes, or menwithgreeneyes.com. They are a night vision themed apparel company. They do a bunch of clothing, iPhone cases, hoodies. They got some pretty cool stuff. They do flags, patches. Long story short, you should definitely check them out. They are the official sponsor of this episode. That's right, ladies and gentlemen, we got a sponsor. So their link will be in the description. They got some pretty cool stuff, some pretty cool designs as well. I really like their God of Dusk hoodie. Looks pretty dope. So they
God
got some
of
pretty cool
Dusk.
stuff.
That is funny.
It's pretty awesome, dude. It's pretty dope. So they've got some pretty good stuff. They've got some iPhone cases, hats, hoodies, flags, patches. We do have a link in an affiliate link in our description of this episode and in the rest of the episodes that we've posted up to this point, as well as if you type in Midtier 10, that's MIDTIER 10, you will get 10% off of your order. So
Mid-tier 10. Mid-tier 10. Got it.
yes,
I'm gonna take that down for a mental note for myself, dude.
Yeah,
Their clothing is pretty dope. I was going through it. Great stuff. Huge fan of the guy. Like I'm kind of a newbie when it comes to him. Like I didn't know much about him until we started talking about the sponsorship and stuff. And I started going through all his stuff. He's hysterical. He is so funny.
yeah, he's a pretty cool dude. He's contacted me on Instagram a little bit. We've gone back and forth. He's a big fan of the podcast, so I really appreciate that. I really appreciate him, partnering up with us on that. So I think it's pretty cool. I actually, it was a funny story. I talked to him once or twice about our cold weather episode, and he said he liked us mentioning the whole thing about the Vaseline socks. And and it was funny. I didn't think anything after that. And I have another buddy who I guess is friends with this guy, who is another friend of mine on Instagram, and he hit me up and was like, "Hey, man, he's a huge fan of your podcast." And I didn't realize it was the same guy until I went back to my messages, and I was like, "Oh yeah, sick."
What's up, dude?
Yeah, so super cool dude. He's been awesome. He's been sharing our stuff on his story too, trying to spread the word. He's a big fan of the podcast. Really appreciate him. But yeah, so I just wanted to put that out there. And then also too, open note to anybody out there. If you like us, if you want to support us, help us, sponsor, whatever, affiliate link, any of that stuff, you can contact us on our we'll have our Instagram handles in the description. You can hit us up,
Yeah.
DM us. We're open to hearing whatever. We'll admit we're not going to shill, right? Like we'll speak up for like I'm going to promote people that I like. As far as like I like what they do, they like what we do, support each other, but I'm not going to sit here and be like, hey, give me money to say good things. I'm not going to do that.
Unless you want to hit me up, I'll do that. No, I'm just
Yeah.
kidding.
Mike has no soul, so that's fine.
No problem, dude.
Yeah, his soul died a long time ago.
Dude, yeah, I was sorry to keep on going back and forth on this, but like I was going through that guy's stuff. I was looking through his shirts. Super funny designs, super cool designs. I'm a huge fan of that. The one shirt I was looking at, I forgot what it was with the Grim Reaper and the nod, like the quad nods on the back.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's way too highbrow for me. I'm mid tier, not high tier, so I would never have those. But super cool shirt.
Hey, well, technically, if it's a skeleton or Grim Reaper having it, then you're kind of dead, right? So
right, it's mid tier or die, dude.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, other than that aside,
do a special request to get a run with just like some Amazon night vision.
Did you say Did you say a special request?
No, I screw you. Anyway, just do a special run of shirts where it's just like a dude wearing one of those like Swamp Fox binoculars that are night vision.
Oh, bro, it's just all holes and shit.
Just like, how do you make a skeleton look retarded? Because that's what I want on my shirt. But no, in all seriousness though, like he's an awesome guy.
Yeah. I need to reach out to him. I need to talk to him, get a little bit of one-on-one with him because he could be a total douche. I don't know this guy. I know he's funny. I know that.
Yeah, he's pretty cool dude.
Yeah, if you can hear this, if you're listening to this episode of the podcast, hit me up, dude, because I'm trying to figure out if you're a douche or not.
Hey, and if you are listening to this, I will again. His Instagram handle's in the thing, and I'll DM you with his profile to make sure we're all on the same base.
Sweet.
Moving forward, so we talked last episode about how every day is a new nightmare, and so far it hasn't gotten any better. So. Yeah, so my bingo card for 2023 is looking real weird right now. I did not expect aliens to be the next thing. Yeah, I didn't have UFOs on there or Chinese balloons or whatever they are. I don't even care whose they are anymore. I'm just glad we're shooting them down. But it is kind of weird.
Doing the American thing, dude.
It's getting a little old at this point to be like I'll check my Instagram and I follow like a couple Intel based channels. But, it's like every one of them every other day is like, oh, new no-fly zone put over to this, super secret squirrel base and F-22 scramble. And, it's one of those things where it's like when it happens once, it's worrying. When it happens 3 times, it's still worrying. But like by the 4th time, you're like, okay.
All right, I've heard this before. Just shoot it down already.
Yeah, exactly. You're like, just let the little green men land. Let's get this over with.
Dude, at this point, I'm kind of down for it, though. I told you before I was tired of working, and, like, now they're coming to, like, punch my check. They're like, hey, we heard you. Like, what's up, motherfucker?
Dude, for me, it's like, it's the waiting that kills me. It's like, come on, just do. It's like I'm poking it with a stick. Just do something already. Like, let's go.
I want do something. Also,
yeah.
Do not have the loadout for this. I was expecting to fight my own government, if we're going to be 100% honest with you. I don't have a phaser gun yet.
Hey, well, you know what? How funny it would be, though, if the aliens like drop out from these balloons and they're just like, people from Ohio.
It's always people from Ohio, dude.
Yeah, Ohio's like, they've just been amongst us the whole time. That's why all those jokes about cryptids in Ohio are around. But yeah, so speaking of Ohio, that's the other thing too that's also terrifying was for those who don't know, there was this big a train went off the tracks because I can't speak English. A train went off the tracks, caught fire, and apparently I'm not a science guy, I don't remember the name of the chemical, but apparently it's whatever killed a bunch of people in World War One, and it caught fire and was like this huge mushroom cloud of things, which is just another reason to never go to Ohio. And for my Ohio listeners, leave.
Get out. Ohio.
God is sending you signals, okay?
Ohio is so nuts right now, dude. It's so funny. It all started with that song, and then it was all over TikTok where it was like...
Or was like what?
Where it was like, sorry, I'm trying to help my girlfriend out with something she's doing in the middle of her chemistry. So it started off with TikTok, and it was like a funny thing, like, haha, like people in Ohio go crazy, like goes nuts, like nothing's normal in Ohio. And then like they started taking it for real. Like they were like, oh, this is for realsies now? And they, just the wildest shit I've ever heard of is coming out of Ohio right now. They're trying to be in Florida.
It's to the point to where like my first grader comes home and tells me things about Ohio.
Your first grader comes home, she's like, it's going down in Ohio right now, Dad.
He asked me, he's like, is Ohio in America? I was like, yeah. He's like, are you sure? Because I heard Ohio wasn't real. I was like, it's not. We don't go there.
It's a make-believe place. They were tired of people thinking they weren't real. And they're like, I'm a real boy.
It's like New Zealand on a map. It just doesn't exist.
It's not real if you just don't admit it, dude.
Just like homosexuality. What?
Oh my God. Lucas, is that you?
Oh, I laughed too hard at that.
Have you seen his stuff lately?
I haven't really. I I don't follow him as much as I used to. I mean, like his company's cool. He's got some good stuff, but I mean, it's like I just don't follow a lot of the drama stuff.
He's been going through it. I mean, it's a reasonable thing to go through though, because like it's a big thing on the internet right now. Like everyone's fighting over like, what do you consider you believe in as an American? Like everyone has the right to fucking own guns and stuff like that. And like it's he's got a good
Oh, I know
reason.
what you're talking about. I know what you're
Yeah,
talking about the
yeah,
whole like is the Second Amendment for everybody thing.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, like I'll say this. I think everyone has the right to own a firearm, just like everyone has the right to say things whether or not I like it.
Yeah.
Whether or not I like the fact that those people exercise that right is different, and whether or not I consider those people an ally is different. Just because I agree that because that's my thing is like you could be a radical anti-communist, transgender, whatever, blah blah blah. I still think you have
Trans.
the right to own a firearm, but I'm not necessarily going to consider you an ally.
Yeah. Always
You know what I
watch
mean?
your out. Like that's why
Like,
a lot of people they wanted me to answer it. They're like, "How do you feel about this? Like, how do you want to like how do you take this?" And I was like, "You're not gonna like my answer." And
yeah,
like, what do you mean you're not gonna like your answer? And it was like, "Yeah, well, I believe if I have the right to own this firearm, so does that transgender crazy Antifa fucking guy. He has every right to
yeah,
use my gun."
yeah. And I mean, I look at it the same way as like free speech, right? Like I can say whatever I want, and I will advocate for your right to say whatever you want. Um, doesn't mean I'm going to consider you an ally. And it's also nuanced because it's like I also understand the fact that like there are some people out there that are not on my side and are more than willing to take my guns away. Say as long by them using their guns, right? Like there's some commie types out there that are like, hey man, they're like, oh, I thought you said the Second Amendment's for everybody, and it's like, yeah, but you advocated for taking my guns away, so no longer for you. So my thing is like,
No, no more for you.
yeah, if you promote freedom and if you're a Second Amendment purist in the sense that like you believe everyone should have the right to own firearms and that the any type of taking those away is an infringement, then you're on my side. But regardless if you're left, right, middle, whatever, and
Yeah.
you advocate that like you one group should have it but another group doesn't, that becomes a real slippery slope because it becomes a matter of like who decides that.
Yeah, if you're part of the cool kid club you're in, like if you're part of the like, and don't get me wrong, I'm all about it. Preparedness, be prepared, know how to use your guns, everything like that. But if you're not part of that group, you're just that weekend shooter, that dad showing their daughter how to fire a pistol, something like that. Where is you can get in, but the guy who's like gay or something like that can't own the gun because you don't trust his mental capacity, something like that. You're just making rules just like your government's making for you that you're calling unjust and unfair right now. Those same
Right.
rules that you're saying like, oh, should be implemented because they don't think straight, things like that, is the same way they were thinking when they said, yeah, nobody needs full auto.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, or you can look back on any type of thing. I mean, like some of the first gun laws in the United States were designed to keep freed slaves from owning firearms. That was someone who decided that hey, it's okay for us, but not for you. And
Yeah,
so I think it's a real slippery slope. And I think that I understand the argument where people are like, oh, well, what about this, super lefty Antifa, blah blah blah, whatever, right? Like I said, if they're promoting like, hey, everyone should have firearms, right? If as long as they're not like hypocritical in their sense of being pro gun, like if they're like, oh, only our group should have guns, but your group can't, or they're just seeking to disarm us.
yeah,
I understand that argument. And my thing is like, I think that we have to separate the baby from the bathwater, right? Is that like, hey, if you're a pro gun group, but you have really terrible other ideas, like we can agree on the gun side of things, on the gun legislation, and we can disagree on everything else. I can fight you across the street everywhere on everything else, right? But that's the thing again. Like, it's like just because you're pro gun doesn't necessarily mean I consider you a political ally.
yeah. Doesn't mean we're on the same side here. Yeah, no,
Exactly. Like I still advocate for like the right that everyone should own a gun. Like everyone has the ability to own a gun. I don't think necessarily that I think that there's some people who definitely have no business being around them, but I think that everyone should have the ability to and have the right to, and that. But just because I believe you have the right to doesn't mean that like I see you as an ally because you have one.
yeah, no joke. If you want to talk about that too, it's just like it's a lot of white supremacist groups. There's a ton of white supremacist groups that think the same way I think, and I'm I'm as far away from a white supremacist as you can get. I'm a brown man in America with an Asian penis and black hair. Like, you know, I
You
get
heard it here, folks. Mike's a white supremacist. I'm kidding.
a lot of white supremacists are like, yeah, full guns, full auto, everything. Like civilians should have tanks, you know. And like they say that part, I'm like, you know what, I could get down with that. And then they're like, you know, also no more, you know, Asians in the group in America. I'm like, ooh, now I'm
Yeah,
not.
yeah, exactly. I mean, I look at it this way, right? You get like those people who like I'm gonna butcher it, but there's like a Karl Marx quote where like Karl Marx is basically advocating for, you know, the proletariat to have firearms, be able to overthrow, you know, the evil government that's
Yeah,
controlling them, right? And that's the thing is like you can say that and be pro gun, and I can be like, heck yeah, dude, we're pro gun. But if you're going to advocate your position to take away any of my other rights or to disagree on other things that I hold truly dear, it's one of those things where it's like, okay, cool. Like I see that you're pro gun, and I like the fact that you are able to exercise that right. But I don't see you as an ally in my fight here. I don't see you. You know, when the boog hits, I'm not going to be like, oh yeah, you better unite with the commies. I'm going to be like, no, you're still the enemy. I just, you know, I can recognize that you still advocate for firearms ownership.
yeah,
So, anyway, now that we've got ourselves canceled,
yeah.
um,
Right.
and
I'm
lost half
done
our
for.
following.
I am done for, bro. It was nice knowing you.
So let's move on. So main topic this week, we're getting into small unit tactics, some recon stuff. Let's dive into the meat and potatoes here. So when we talk about small unit tactics and teams, I like to think of the idea of like a 4-man team. I think a lot of us that are out there training that have some buddies that are doing stuff like hanging out in the woods, doing some goon boy stuff. Realistically, 4 is probably a more reasonable number. I know there are some people out there that have larger groups, better, larger amounts of friends or larger people that they train with where they, you know, maybe even get 10, 12, 20, whatever. I think using 4 is a good number for a majority of people because most people, it's you and your buddy, maybe you and a couple buddies, and you can scale up from there as need be to build a team. Because I think there
once
needs. Go ahead.
once you have the main blocks kind of checked off, everything else is pretty. Is like it's just
Yeah.
gravy on top.
Well, the nice thing about a 4-man team is like it's easily replicated, and you can, if you have 8 people, you can have 2 4-man teams.
Two
You know,
format
or,
teams, or even like the idea of what was it like having multiple of like different calibers. That's when you can really get into like specialties too.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah. So let's talk about that a little bit. So my thing is, I think the 4-man team works really well. I think most people that come from a military background are familiar with the 4-man fire team setup. So from my experience, generally what you have a team leader who his job is basically to lead the team, right? Like it's pretty self-explanatory. Generally, this person's got maps, radios. If everyone else doesn't have a radio, but they've got they're the one in charge. They're the man with the plan. They know what's going on. They've got the materials and the navigational skills and tools to get from point A to lead everybody from point A to point B. Generally, have an assistant team leader in case the team leader goes down, who's kind of the backup for that guy. And then you'll either have 2 riflemen, or you could have potentially 2 specialists or a specialist and a rifleman, depending upon what type of things you have. And when I see specialist, I mean things like if you've got a guy who's got a DMR setup, someone who can extend the firing range of the group, or if you have a guy, either your assistant team leader or the other rifleman, that can do something like, maybe he's got a couple Magpul D60s and a heavy barrel and a really light trigger or an echo trigger or something, to where he can simulate like a machine gunner without having a legit machine gun. He can just put down a lot of fire, right? Those are your specialty
Or a
roles.
machine gun.
Or yeah, I mean, hey, if we're gonna party, um, yeah. So if that capability exists, absolutely. Understanding that's not attainable for a lot of us, especially some of us mid-tier dudes, um, you know, you can put a really light trigger in an AR. You get one of them like one of those like you cough and it goes off type of triggers, and you can get a lot of lead down range real quick. You put like a EO, or not an EOTech, but a FOSTech Echo trigger or something like the binary trigger, something like that, and you can get a lot of rounds down range really quick. Just saying.
Yeah.
If you're a real spicy boy and you've got someone with a flare launcher, or as we will say, the civilian legal version of the 37 millimeter grade launcher, or whatever, that offers other capabilities, but it allows you to set up a 4-man team to where you can have even split that off into 2-man teams to where, if you need to move on an objective, you can have 2 people covering, 2 people moving. You get a lot of flexibility with what you can do with a 4-man team. You can set up a very easy perimeter. You have 6-hour watches if you need to set up, an LPOP somewhere or sit down and sit tight and get some rest with people. You get a lot of flexibility out of a 4-man team. Plus, it's a pretty easy to control movement. It's easy to arm and equip 4 people than it is a lot larger number of people. It's easy to say like, hey, we all have ARs. Let's keep all of our stuff in 5.56. Let's make our DMR, a Mark 12 SPR, with a 18 to 20-inch barrel AR, and then we'll have the dude with a heavy barrel, be basically our AR RPK gunner.
Yeah.
So anyway, I'm a big fan of the 4-man team. I did see an interesting post, and I know I sent it to you, about a 3-man team. And basically, the 3-man team was just a simplified version of a 4-man. With this, you basically have a team leader, you have your quote-unquote machine gunner, and you have a DMR. And the idea with this was that everybody everyone carried extra equipment for the machine gunner. And regardless of a 3-man team, 4-man team, like that's kind of the idea. And if you look back throughout history, basically after post World War I forward, the idea of the infantry squad was built around the machine gunner. And so the idea was everybody carried extra magazines. Like the Brits did a great example of this. You ever see World War II movies where the Brits got like those big square pouches on their belts?
Yeah.
So those generally what happened is that you have all your riflemen, and those pouches, they're each carrying 4 magazines of magazines for the Bren gun, which was their machine gun, right? And the whole idea was to support the machine gun, so the machine gun could support them, right? Everyone carries their extra ammo, drops it off with the machine gunner. He lays down fire. They can assault the objective.
Huh.
Same type of concept, right? You got a 3-man team, 4-man team, right? Everyone carries a couple extra mags or a drum, whatever it's going to be, for the guy who's running the machine gun. Now, with as far as like equipment's concerned, it's easy to do it if everyone has the same caliber. However, if the one dude with an AK, this might be that kind of thing where, like I know we talked about before, where you're not uniform, but that might be a positive in your end. In this case, to where like AK drum mags are pretty easy to get. Ammo is relatively inexpensive. You have one or two of your guys carry a couple extra drum mags, and you use the AK or an RPK as kind of your machine gunner role to kind of lay down that fire. It's a thought.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, I'm for that, but also against that at the same time.
So go ahead.
Reason being, I'm for that and against that is that if I am carrying someone else's ammo around, like I want to be able to use it if that guy gets shot in the face.
Right. Now that's the thing where you just gotta come up with that as a team, right? If you're willing to make that kind of risk of being like, okay, we have one dude with an AK, the rest of us are running ARs. Maybe we should use the AK guy. It's kind of our DMR guy. Not our DMR, but like our machine gunner. That's something you all got to come up with, right? But if it's like you said, if it's one of those things where it's easier whenever it's all said and done. Now, I think piston-driven system would work really well for a machine gun type setup, a heavy barrel system like that, or even like honestly like an M16A2.
Absolutely,
like old school like that. Pop on a bipod. I like to fantasize about using my G3 for that because it's 308, but 20 rounds goes really quick. I refuse to pay $250 for a 50-round drum mag because that's just ridiculous. And screw you, HK. So
it's for the good of the colony here,
right. Now, if you're one of those guys that's got the money for it, and you've got like one of those one of the civilian type of saws or a machine gun saw, or you've got like those what is it, the MCX up or the MCR upper, the MCR Fight Light, the belt fed AR upper. If you've got one of those, boy, it is your time to shine for that. That money paid off. That's where it's at. I will say the other thing too is like, so if we're talking DMRs, the DMR feels a lot more attainable for people. So because basically you're just getting a heavy, you're getting a longer barreled rifle with an optic. It's way easier than running something to simulate full auto. You don't get the rate of fire, obviously, but you definitely get the range that you can have to really put accurate rounds on target at a distance. And that alone can definitely help itself out with ambushes, with engaging an enemy and kind of keeping them on their toes as they approach. You can definitely do a lot with that. So again, kind of going back to the team formation thing, generally, some type of specialist role if you have it. Now, if you don't have anything like that, if everyone's just running like standard AR setups, red dot magnifiers type things like that, that's fine. You have 3 riflemen and a team leader.
Yeah, and that that does work out in a lot of people's cases.
Yeah, and it's totally fine. If you don't have like a dedicated DMR, maybe you take the guy who's the best shot and whatever setup he has. Okay, great, he's your DMR guy. Or you take a dude who's just got some kind of kit that he's carrying all the magazines. Guess what, dude? Your job, spray and pray in that direction. Anything that moves that way, just mag dump into trash.
Lay the hate.
Yeah, exactly. Right. It's like, hey man, just run it. So you can definitely do a lot with that. Obviously we don't have a visual component to the show, which hopefully we will later on. Otherwise I'd go over like actual like formations and things like that, but it's a little too complicated to get into without a visual, at least for me, because I'm retarded. I need to see pictures. You can look up a lot of stuff on that on YouTube on moving in a 4-man team, but just doing simple things as in like doing a 2-man buddy rush or bounding Overwatch, whatever you want to call it, where 2 people provide covering fire, the other 2 move, and you basically play this leapfrog game to an objective. It becomes a lot easier. I think a 4-man unit is very easy to control or lead in a way, and it's easy to scale, right? So if you have 8 people, well, now you can have 2 4-man teams. You can have a team up and a team down. You can, have a maneuver team. And actually, going back to that, one of the things I've always found really interesting, I like learning about different militaries' approaches to things that aren't the American military, because some countries have different aspects that they look at, right? Yeah. So the Australians in Vietnam came up with a really interesting way of doing something where they called it a rifle team and a scout team. And what they had is in an 8-man team, you had 4 people with FALs and 4 people with M16s. The M16s were the skirmishers or the scouts. Their job was to go ahead of everybody else, a couple, 100 yards or so, and they would run in their own 4-man, formation. And when they received contact, they would initiate that contact and then be followed up by the heavy hitters with 308 with FALs. And those were the rifle teams. So the scout teams were to engage the enemy and kind of, be the skirmishers, kind of figure out where they're at, what they're doing, and keep them pinned down until the rifle team could show up. And the rifle team could sometimes be supplemented by a machine gun. And those guys would show up and just kind of be like, hey, the cavalry's here, right? And so I think that if you have couple 4-man teams, that seems to be a really effective thing. If you can have maybe some of your lighter set dudes run out and run scouting mission type things. Right? They're a couple 100 yards ahead. They're kind of scouting, seeing what's going on. If they get engaged, you can move up with your heavier guys and your more specialized items. Or, even if you don't have specialized items, you just have 4 more people that can engage, or those guys can break off, come back and run intel and be like, hey, we got a group of dudes up ahead. It's going to be a big problem. Maybe we shouldn't go that way.
That's that's a super interesting way to take kind of a problem that they have, like not being able to supply enough people with every amount of thing they can basically at that time. Because let's be honest here, not a lot of countries have the kind of money that we can spend.
Exactly.
So that's pretty dope. That's an interesting way to do it.
Well, and it's interesting, I think, to look at that or to look at different guerrilla forces around the world, because, again, you got to get out of the mindset of having a military-industrial complex behind you. You got to get out of that global war on terror mindset, because, we don't have support. We don't have helicopters to fly us ammo. We're on our own. If the crap hits the fan, what you got's what you got. That's it. So if you and your homies are running half AKs and half ARs, like that's what you got. You don't have time to go get everyone standardized on a caliber, or you got one dude that's showing up with like a 303 bolt gun because he's edgy. Like you don't have time to figure that out. You just got to find a role for him to play. And that's another thing too, is finding finding your role, right? And being humble in your role and understanding that, like, you're not in that position for a bad reason, right? Like maybe you might think like, oh, I should be team leader, blah, blah, blah. Well, you know, maybe you don't have the leadership skills, or maybe you don't have whatever. Like understanding and accepting your role wherever it is, and understanding that you have an important part to play, even if it's not as important as you think it is.
Yeah. See, that's a big thing. Is that, like, a lot of people always like rip on like the military, and like we both came from the military. You're like, hey, what's your job? What's your job? Oh, I'm a CS. I'm a cook. I'm a this. I'm that. And we start clowning you, dude. And we're just like, haha, like you're not essential, in Pogue, whatever it may be. And what would we be with if everyone wasn't playing their role at all times?
Right. No, exactly. And that's the thing too, is it's like, I know we've touched on this a little bit before, and this is going a little bit deeper than just like a 4-man team, but let's say, you've got people with you that, maybe you're not a great shot, but you're good at other things, okay. Maybe like, when people toss around that whole, like, you're not a combatant, blah, 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 blah. You don't have nods. You're not a combatant. Okay, like whatever, man. Like let's say you physically, mentally, whatever, for some reason, you're not the guy that's going to be, slinging lead down range. Totally fine.
Guy, pal.
Yeah, that's totally fine. We need comms guys. We need logistics guys. We need cooks. We need medics. We need doctors. We need literally every facet of everything, right? Because like you said, right? Mm-hmm. If I don't have the CS or the cooks or something like that, right? When I get back from doing whatever, there's no hot chow. I'm pissed, right? And I'm real grateful for that guy behind that line that's cooking up a hot meal when I get back and there's hot food. So that's a big plus, right? The logistics guy who makes sure that the stuff that I need gets to where it needs to be, that, I don't get beans when I ask for bullets, and I don't get bullets when I ask for beans. That's an important skill to have. And, there's a lot of smaller things that go into this, because everyone, I think, has this fantasy where it's just like, I'm going to take my 3-day pack, I'm going to go in the woods with the boys, and we're going to go like eat squirrels and scavenge things off dead bodies like it's Call of Duty. And we're just going to live that way, and that's what's going to happen. We're going to have our 7 mags and we're going to be set.
7 mags.
And then like one firefight into it, they're like, I don't have any freaking ammo. And I didn't bring crap. I ran out of toilet paper 6 days ago. I'm on my last MRE. I haven't pooped in 2 weeks.
My ass is chapped, dude. You thought you had a bad day. Wait till you have a chapped ass out in the field, dude.
Wait till you've eaten MREs for 4 straight days, and then you have to go to the bathroom, and you just give birth to an iron piece of rebar.
Dude, I've never had that problem.
Oh, bro, you've been a lucky man. I gave birth to Shaquille O'Neal's forearm once. Dude, it made me question.
I've always heard of it. Like, I understood it. I've just never had that issue.
Dude, I thought I split myself open at that point. I was like, oh, this is bad. Yeah. I was like holding on to the porta potty, just like crying. Yeah, that was a life-changing experience.
Never been the same.
No. Okay, so let's say you've got your team together, right? We'll move on to the recon aspect a little bit before I go off into the weeds here. Let's say you've got your team together, right? You got your 4-man team. Why recon? Well, I think that realistically, in a Minuteman type of thing, we don't have access to a ton of the resources that exist with a modern military force, right? One of those main things is intelligence and reconnaissance, right? I can't log into anything and check out a satellite image if I'm in that kind of situation, right? I'm probably doing this pretty old school with maps and actual human intel. So I'm going to be probably doing a lot of reconnaissance. And realistically, if I only have a 4-man team, I'm probably going to try to stay out of getting into firefights because 4-man team, depending on the size of the group I'm going up against, might not be that awesome. The odds may not be in my favor.
You might end up dead.
Yeah, like the likelihood of that's pretty high, especially with 0 support. So, I mean, like you see like these movies where you have like, these 4-man SEAL teams going off into the woods all by themselves, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, well, they also have like all kinds of weapons on standby to help them out. Air support, artillery, like satellite imagery. They got all this crap coming at the same time. I don't, right? I have a bow thing and a map. So, yeah. And it's like, who am I going to call? Ghostbusters, So, yeah, so I'm probably going to be doing a lot of recon type stuff, right? So, what kind of tools do I need to help me in this? Like one, the one I think often gets overlooked is the importance of having a pad or something to write on and a piece of piece of paper, write in the rain notebook, whatever, and a pen.
Yeah.
Huge things.
Grantham
Even
said
just
it. If you don't have it right in the rain, then fuck you.
yeah, exactly. Just like the amount of things that you need to write down to remember, just little field note crap. Even something as simple as like, hey, what frequency are we on for our radios? What
Just
channel
model.
are we on? You know, just clicking through each channel. Hello, hello, hello.
Dad?
Jeff, and like call signs, things like that. So very important to have those. But also a way to me like binoculars, a monocular, something. Oh, but some type of magnified looking device. And I sound like a retard when I say that. Like some type of like binocular type thing, because you may not always want to point your weapon at whatever it is you're trying to see, right? You might have a magnified optic or an LPVO, something like that. But you might not necessarily want to point that in the direction of what you're trying to look at. So it's really nice to have, some type of binocular or spotting scope or
Yeah.
binos, you
I
know?
mean, sometimes it's nice just so you don't like. Let's say you have to crawl up into something. You have to crawl up into a tree, get a better vantage point, something like that. Like we're talking like pretty outlandish things. You don't want to crawl up there with your rifle. That kind of sucks. So just having some binoculars just makes your life a little bit easier.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's often a very overlooked piece of kit, because
Yeah.
everyone wants to get the sexy stuff. They're like, oh, I'm just be Chris Kyle and scanning targets with my rifle, blah, blah, blah. You might not always want to do that. You might not always want to be looking at things with your rifle, depending on the way people may perceive that. So definitely having those extra tools. But one thing I think that we've definitely seen has proven its worth in the Ukraine conflict is I think drones are the future. I
Oh
think
yeah.
if you are doing a Minuteman type thing and you are doing it in a serious application, if you take this stuff seriously and you're the kind of guy who's willing to invest money and get your kit and get practice, you should be buying a drone. And I don't
Yeah.
mean I don't think it necessarily. I'll admit I don't know a ton about these. I'm new to the drone thing, so I couldn't tell you like what ones to buy, what's awesome, blah blah blah, whatever, right? But I mean, even if you go to like a hobby store or whatever these sell like RC stuff, and you just buy one that's got a camera on it to get used to it, kind of learn about it, and then obviously the more you get into it, upgrade to something cool and something better, whatever. But like the Intel capabilities that these things have been able to produce
It's
are
bananas, dude.
it's insane to me. Like someone with like a $200 Chinese four rotor drone can fly this thing high enough to where no one's really paying attention to it, and then call in artillery strikes, and using like a really cheap piece of equipment is awesome. I mean, like, or I've seen some ingenious ways they've been able to attach hand grenades basically on strings, and be able to deploy these things. Like I watched one where a guy flew over a tank, dropped basically an improvised mortar into the hatch of an open T90, blew it up. And it's like, bro, a $40 Radio Shack drone with a mortar took out your $14 million tank. Like that kind of stuff blows my mind. Or even just the ability to, I watched one where they were running like MREs out to people with these.
Yeah, that's the thing that gets me about it is that just doing the small shit, dude. Doing that
Yeah,
little shit that you wouldn't even think about.
yeah, running some MREs out to people, or if you could figure out a way to drop some like drop a mag safely or something, like some kind of way to drop equipment, I think is awesome. But yeah, drones I think are definitely the future, and I think those who aren't getting into it, I think we're already behind the ball. We've seen how well they've been effective. And then also like the intelligence capability, being able to fly it up high enough, get an image of what's going on. Depending on the like how sophisticated of a camera you have, or if you have the ability to put in kind of infrared or stuff like that. I mean, if you're getting ready to cross a danger area, what better way than like, hey man, before we get to this clearing, a couple hundred yards back here in the woods, I'm gonna pop the drone up, kind of fly it around the area and make sure that there's nobody there.
This is also
Or
talking best case scenarios, ladies and gentlemen. By the way,
oh, sure.
if you don't have power, if you don't have, an EMP goes off, something along that sort, there's really not that much you can do with a drone. But if we're talking about bushwhacker stuff, that's definitely something I'd want to have in my arsenal.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. Like if I'm talking like an ideal Minuteman kit, like a drone is definitely towards the top of recon capability.
Yeah,
Um, but yeah, so I mean, and like you said, EMP, get good at using binoculars, get good at building
yeah,
an LPOP, a good listening post, observation post is what that stands for. It should be, and actually, P&W Gorilla on his page has a really good post about this. But basically, you want to dig kind of a concealed position as best you can. You don't have to dig it if it's already existing, whatever. I'm thinking of like out in the woods. You leave the stuff in front of it alone because you want it to look natural, and you camouflage everything behind it as best you can. So ideally, you should be able to look out, but people shouldn't be able to look in and find you. I think this actually works really good too in an urban setting because it's not as obvious. I mean, as not obvious as that is out in the woods. In an urban setting, you can do it super low key. I mean, you can even have an LPOP sitting at your local Starbucks outside, on the outside, having a coffee, you know,
yeah,
looking like you're messing around on your phone or taking selfies, but in the background your selfie is the stuff you're trying to take a picture of.
yeah. You can get away
And
with a lot of it.
yeah, I mean, you look at things, you look at like some of the resistance stuff coming out of World War II. They were able to do some human intelligence with stuff where, you just have a guy walking to work every day on his way to the bakery, and he passes the cafe where the SS officers have lunch, and the same guys have lunch at the same time every day, and that little bit of human intelligence, he just passes that to the right person, and someone knows, hey, if there was ever going to be a time I wanted to attack an SS officer, it's probably during lunchtime at this cafe at this time. If I were to do something there, the high likelihood of me killing an SS officer is pretty high.
Yeah, right. If I
Yeah,
were to set off a certain thing,
yeah, exactly. So like, recon exists not only in like the whole let's get gillied up, we're going to go out, sit down behind a rifle, and do whatever we got to do. But it also exists in the human intelligence side of like just going out into an urban setting and just paying attention to things around you and taking notes or taking a quick picture. I mean, how out of place is it just to have some dude walking around town taking pictures of stuff? People do it all the time, especially if you got like a girl with you or you're some buddies with you and you're just acting like you're a tourist. It's very easy to pass by and get information that way. But yeah, I think so. Applying some of those concepts can be pretty easy to practice actually, and I think are pretty important things to consider because they can play a major role if you're talking preparedness. Because the big thing is, all of us have these grandiose ideas of like, we're gonna be out the boonies and we're gonna protect our land, blah blah blah. But the big thing is like if we don't know what's coming at us or not by us or what's going on, if we don't have an idea of intelligence, we're none of that does any good.
yeah, we're screwed.
Yeah, I mean, like if you're like, okay, things have hit the fan, things have gone south, Chinese have invaded, whatever, right? We're gonna go hit this location. If you don't have any intel on that, like that's a pipe dream. Good luck, dude. Like the survivability is pretty low. Now, obviously, things happen with like things of circumstance, but I mean, like if you're planning an operation, you absolutely need intelligence.
Yeah,
To
I'm not gonna
and
say people don't get lucky. People get very lucky.
Oh yeah, yeah, absolutely. People get lucky, but you think about things where it's like, even something as simple as just like having somebody drive by it or walk by a location and like, hey, was it heavily guarded? Was it not? Were there lights? Was it dark? You know, there's a reason like when you watch, like bank heist movies, they have a guy in the bank, you know, doing stuff or like an electrician doing something. Or like he's gathering intelligence, right? They're not just they don't just walk into a bank completely blind and like, oh, we're gonna figure it out as we go. We're just gonna wing it. There's a reason these things are like spy movies. Like Ocean's 11 is a great example. There's a reason these things are so thought out. Not only does it do good stuff for the plot and kill an hour and a half of your time, but it's because there's a lot of planning that goes into this. And I think that's one thing too, going in with Recon a little bit, is like mission planning is a skill I think a lot more people need to get used to, of trying to figure out like what is it that you want to do, how are you going to do it, what do we have, what do we need, and kind of getting into the nitty gritty of it. I mean, people are going to bring up the whole MET-TC thing as far as mission planning, and you don't necessarily have to follow a military acronym for it. but you can, just kind of think about it like, okay, what is the goal of what we're trying to do? What is our mission? What do we have? What's our timeline? What happens if we screw up or fail, or we need to get the heck out of Dodge? And do we need anything that we don't have? Simple things like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think reconnaissance is a vastly overlooked thing because it's not as sexy as direct action type stuff. Everyone wants to be the door kicker. No one wants to be the guy necessarily that's sitting up on the side of a mountain for 3 days looking through an optic, waiting for something to happen.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll give you that one 100%, dude. No one wants to be the shitty guy up there. Like, fuck, like I'm the side character, man.
Yeah, exactly. Everyone wants to have that main character energy. But, like I said, like going back to the team thing, know your role and how you're going to, use your role, right? And accept it. Like, know that that's your role and embrace it. Be the best, whatever that is you can be. Be the best, machine gunner you can be. Be the best comms guy you can be, and do something positive for whatever effort you're trying to support. So with that, unless you had anything else to kind of touch on Recon, I did have one more thing I kind of wanted to go over.
No, let's hear it, dude.
Okay,
I've
so
been
speaking,
super quiet this episode, man. I'm sorry, everyone at home listening and everything like that. I have been traveling around a lot, like to DC and everything like that. So I do have like this kind of a cold going on right now. I'm being kind of a bitch. I'm being quiet, so I'm sorry, guys.
So you've got so everyone, we've got patient 0 for our next pandemic on here. So you heard it first.
DC was wonderful, by the way.
What were you doing? Do you want to talk about what you did in DC, or can you?
I'll hit you up on a private line. I'll hit you up on the private, let you know.
All right. Now you got me
too crazy.
Secret squirrel stuff. Like I shot a guy in the face. Yeah. So this was one I kind of want to touch on, and I'm going to try to make it quick. But speaking of being the best you can be, I've seen a lot of posts lately where it's starting to come back up, and it always worries me when it does, of people, specifically either veterans or active duty guys, who are crapping all over Minuteman type stuff.
I hate my veterans, dude.
Yeah, right. So dudes who are like specifically, and if you're listening to this and this is who you are and you're listening to my podcast, go screw yourself for saying that. But I'm not going to name names. But there was a page I followed, and he posted this dude who was like, if you're not the actual Minuteman, if you think you're the militia or the Minuteman, whatever, like you're living this fantasy and you're not, you and Steve down the street and your cry JPC aren't the Minuteman, like the National Guard is. It's literally what it is, and that's who they are. And like you just need to go do this, like just go join the National Guard and get paid to do it. Blah 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 blah. And the thing that upset me the most was like, one, this dude's crapping all over regular dudes who either were military or a lot of you guys never have been, and that's totally fine. There's nothing wrong with that. And in many ways I think that's almost better to a certain aspect, because my thing is I have way more respect for dudes that are spending their own time, their own money, sacrificing the time with their families and everything else into their own pocket to go out and do this stuff that we find is so essential, versus someone who that's their job, because they don't have that kid doesn't have a say. Okay.
Yeah, he's there to be there.
And on top of that, he's National Guard, so he's doing it 1 week in a month, right? And you and I both know reserves, National Guard, whatever, even active duty, you are spending way more time going through like sexual assault awareness and drunk driving briefs and doing cyber awareness challenges to make sure that, Jeff, the computer guy, doesn't steal your identity than you are doing anything useful. I can safely say a majority of the military, outside of a few MOSs, and I'll give you that, but a majority of the military touches a rifle twice a year to qualify and does the bare minimum of training to really meet a standard, because the funding's not there, the people aren't concerned about it, and half the people in that MOS don't care. So don't come at people acting like you're God's gift to humanity, the arbiter of what is tactical, because you decided to go join the National Guard and sit in an office for 2 weeks, twiddling your thumbs for 8 hours a day, waiting to go out to do a 2 week field exercise. That 10 days of that 2 weeks is setting up a tent and taking it back down in safety briefs. Like, don't sit here and gatekeep. Like, that's my biggest thing. Is it just pisses me off so bad, because like, here I am. I know you're a Navy vet. I'm a Navy vet. We were both in communities in the Navy that were, much more active and much more, man, how would you like? Well, we were expeditionary, right?
Yeah.
For those who don't know what it is, you guys can look it up. It's a more active component of the Navy, right?
Yeah.
We're
So
doing.
we're not. I'm not sitting there saying that we're Navy SEALs or anything, but
No, but
we're doing more active shit than most people.
right. For the Navy, we're pretty active as far as training goes, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I'll be the first one to admit there's a bunch of stuff I don't know, and there's a bunch of stuff that I have met people who are better at, right? So like, this guy's out there being like, oh, just go join the National Guard, blah 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 blah. I have met civilians through a lot of them I've met through you guys on Instagram. A lot of you guys are followers, things like this, and seeing you dudes pushing yourselves harder, going out and doing some badass stuff with your own money, your own kit, your own time, and putting me to shame, right? And seeing you guys do it, and I love to see that stuff, man. And it's like, some of you guys never stepped foot in a recruiting office once, and you're out there killing it. And I can safely say some of you are better than a majority of the military out there, right?
Yeah.
All these dudes out there being like, oh, really? You think Jeff from accounting that goes out and does all this stuff's better than than me, and a National Guard infantryman? 100%, because he's going out every Saturday with the boys and doing his thing, and you're going out 1 week in a month to maybe touch a rifle twice a year. Like, he's actually out there doing what he's saying he's doing. He's actually putting his time to it. Like, you want to talk about the Minutemen? All the original Minutemen had day jobs.
Yep.
They all had day jobs. They all had their own thing going on and spent their own time, their own money, and they put it on the line. The other thing that they don't have, which I see as a big plus, is they don't have any type of divided loyalty. They don't have anything to go, man, like, for example, with the National Guard, right?
Mm-hmm.
If someone in the chain of command, National Guard, reserves, whatever, puts out and says, you need to go do A, B, C, and you go, that's unconstitutional as hell. I'm not going to do that. And we saw this with COVID. There is a small percentage of people that will say no. And there is a vast majority of people that'll come up with one reason or another to justify whatever they do, right? Across the board, whatever it is. So, these people out there, they'll be thinking, like, for example, this National Guard guy, I guarantee you, they tell him to go do something like that, he's going to go in his head, man, it's either this or I lose my job, or I lose my benefits, or, I lose the GI Bill or whatever, right? And you have that divided loyalty there of like, man, of what am I going to do here? Now, I'm not saying that not everybody's like that. There are some people who are principled as hell that like, they will follow through no matter what, whether it's good, bad, or indifferent. The benefit of being a civilian Minuteman is you don't have to worry about those conflicts.
Dude, and I have to be honest with you. When I was at 18, I was part of that group. I would have done anything they told me to.
Well, and there's a lot of people who will, and I think like one thing a lot of people misconceive about it is like, you hear these things like, oh, well, if there's going to be a civil war, the military will be on our side. We'll kick all these liberals' asses. Blah blah blah. One, there's liberals in the military too. Most of them are officers and making the decisions. Two, I highly doubt it. I put the military into 3 categories. There's the people that are there, that's a paycheck. They don't care what it is. They're just going to do it because it's a paycheck. It doesn't directly affect them, doesn't matter. There's the other people who are going to be the guys who, like, they are there to enforce whatever they are told.
Yep, that was me.
Right? They will do what they are told. Right? And if that includes doing stuff to civilians, so be it. And there's a very small third category that is very strongly principled that no matter what, they will not. They joined for a certain reason. They believe in the Constitution. They believe in the United States. They believe in the true meaning of what it is to be a patriot, and they will not do that no matter what the consequences. If that means they lose everything, so be it.
Yeah, death by lining up on a fence line and getting shot by your commanding officer kind of deal.
Right. And that portion of the military is a lot smaller than people think it is.
Oh yeah, by far. At 19, 18, dude, I was so fucking young, dumb, and full of cum, dude. I did not care. Like if
Well,
they told me to start murdering civilians because it was for the better good of the community, I would have done it.
and I think that the thing is, there's a lot of people out there that would be in a similar situation. I think the other thing too is that I've brought up this scenario as a hypothetical. I said, okay, let's say there's I was stationed near Seattle at the time, and I was like, let's say there's a hypothetical terrorist attack,
Mm.
um, and your chain of command comes to you and says, okay, posse comitatus out the window. This is a matter of national security. We're sending you guys to go get these people who are responsible for this attack. You have no idea who these people are, or if they were responsible. They could just be political enemies. They could be, anybody. You don't know who these people are, right? But you were told something in good faith, believing your chain of command, who maybe even they don't know, right?
Yeah.
And
Who
you're going to
says they
go
know?
out and you go out and you get these people, right? And you round them up, put them on the train, send them off, right? And you're thinking to yourself, I did a good job. I did a good thing. I protected my country. But you don't know. That's the thing. It's like you don't know who those people were. What if it comes out later that those were political dissidents, or they were just political enemies of the powers that be? You have no idea. And so that's the thing, as I say, like, and I'm going to put this out there. Like, look, I'm a veteran myself. I love you guys that are. I'm not shitting on our service, but I'm saying we've got to fucking humble ourselves. Okay, we can't be sitting here thinking we're God's gift to humanity, just because we just signed on that dotted line. Did we do something that other people didn't? Yes. Should we take pride in our service? Absolutely.
Yeah.
But don't use it as this crutch to be like, I know better than you and I know all, blah, 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 blah. Our job as veterans, if we're living this Minuteman style life, should be to pass on and teach the skills that we've gathered over time to people who need to know them and who want to learn them, but also to be humble enough to learn from people. Because there's things I've learned from people that have schooled me on some stuff that I thought I knew what I was talking about. And they've never stepped a foot, in the recruiting office in their life. And they're better at whatever it is than I am, right? And they got a better tactically sounded mind or whatever it is than I am.
They have better
And,
setups than us, yeah.
yeah, and they're out there putting in the work, right? So don't crap on these people. If you're a gatekeeper, screw you, dude. Like if
You know,
you're
well,
if
yeah.
you're if you're like, yeah, I heard I can't remember his real name, but he goes by Crispy 11B. Anyone that follows Black Rifle Company, you know who he is. He's a big tall guy, burnt to hell. Um, he put out a thing where he said, like if veteran is the only label you have, you lived a boring life. Like
Yeah.
be more than that, right? Be more than that. I look at it as like, that's just, if I were to put all the adjectives of what I am, that's just part of it, right? Veteran is part of it. So is husband, father, Christian, patriot, like a whole bunch of other things come around that. That's not my only thing. If
Damn,
that is your,
how was that low key hella deep right there? Damn,
I,
dude.
I know I'm coming in heavy hitting with the end, right? Um, we're gonna have to do some Bob Ross painting after this. But yeah, man, it's like, don't let that be your only thing, and another, across the board, whatever you are in life, whatever you see as your like modifier, your name, whatever you see as like, whatever follows your name. If I were to put a description, don't let that be the only thing that defines you. Like, don't let that be the only thing. Go find other things to do. Don't just focus your life on that one aspect. Because the big thing about it too is, especially this goes out to all my veteran listeners, even if we did a full 20, right? You join up at 18, you do your full 20, you get out at 38. You're under 40. You have your entire rest of your life to look forward to something, right? Be proud of your service, absolutely. Be proud of the things you've done, but don't let that be the only thing that you're
Oh,
proud of.
it's honestly really sad coming from a lot of the things that I work in, a lot of the fields I'm in, dude. How many people are retired veterans are huge. I have a huge retired veteran. Um, what is it? What is it called? Demographic I work with.
Yeah.
And it's really sad when you see a lot of these people and they have nothing else in life except for that. That's the only thing they have.
Yeah. And that's my thing. It's like, I almost look at it like, people talk about like, oh, high school should be the greatest time of your life. And it's like, bro, that's 4 of the crappiest years I can remember. Like, why is that the highlight of your life, right? And it's like the military. Again, with that, there's a lot of positives, a lot of negatives. Like you're going to meet some awesome people, you're going to make lifelong friendships, you're going to get a lot of experience. But there's also for some people, it's the worst time that they ever had because of the negative things that come out of that, right? So it's like, don't let that be the only thing that defines you is the trauma or the bad things. Move past that. But anyway, we've hit about an hour and we've gone really deep and kind of off track. And anyway,
Love you guys.
we're yeah. So if you've enjoyed listening to us, please continue to do so. This one was kind of I always say that this one was kind of different, but then everyone keeps telling me that they love it. So I guess we're gonna keep that up. So
I mean, it was a little different. I was a little quiet. I'll say that.
It's all good, man. It is what it is. So
yeah. Like I said, I got done traveling, guys. Not feeling super great. Got a cold going on. If I die, I'm sure Austin will tell you. But I'm fine for right now. And sorry I didn't put in too much for this episode. Just know that I love you. And even if your mom doesn't love you, I will. So.
Hey, mom, I know you're listening to this. I know that you love me, so ignore what he says.
Don't lie. Don't lie.
But yeah, so hey, again, I want to shout out again to our sponsor on Instagram. Their handle is at the men with green eyes, or you can check out the link in our description, menwithgreeneyes.com. Type in Midtier 10 for 10% off. Again, awesome that they're willing to sponsor us. If anybody else is listening and they want to take a hand in that, they want a sponsorship, want us to shout them out, whatever, more than happy to. DM us on Instagram. Our contact info will be in the description. Thanks for listening again, guys. I know this one's been a little bit different. Hopefully, for those of you that are watching the Super Bowl, this won't be too much of a distraction for you. For those who aren't, hell yeah.
Hell yeah, brother.
Yeah. Other than that, guys, stay safe, stay dangerous. I don't know. I'm not your parent. Do what you want. Don't use anything I told you to do, illegal stuff. And if you do, I didn't tell you to do it. I'm not a lawyer. So with that, man, see you next time.
See you next time, man.